At this time, I would like to call upon Ori Greenfeld, one of the grandchildren, and he's going to say Kapitel Aleph, Kofyetes, or Emes, right? Emes? So Aleph, Mem, and Suf for the Isius Emes, and another Kapitel that he's going to say. Ready?
Asher Smith Dar Halchem and Sarah Dana Asher and say that's a Bahali with the shoe off, they follow up, the Bidra Havalahu, Asher TV Dakhlish Mamma, the Khali, you can the Rakhalish Mabukaha, as they which Rabbi is coming to Zaka, Otribia Shaliva, Lamni Mishpet to Kaha, so as Hukaha as much as Atas, Vinyami. Malaf, this are Saka Kalyam, he sees me, every Techachmeni, my Mitzvah. Mitzvah kiladam idim kamlam nis kati kid vesach sichalim is ken mesman kifu gudach na charti mikal arach kalisi ragulaman ashmar dvarach mishpetach lesharti kater isani manim lechiki mesach medvash lafi mi gudach asperan akin sanesi kalarach shakar تقرأ ناس لفناخا دنا كدبرخا بنيني تابل دخي ناس لفناخا كم راسخات هاتيليني تابانا سفاسيتي هلا كإسلام ديني خوكاخا تعال شاني مرزاخا كي خمنت رزاخا تصدق هي الغازن هي بوداغا بهارتي تعافتي دي شواسخا أدنا بسرساخا شاشوي تخين عشو سالالكا مش بتاخي يازرني تيسي كسابت باكي شبداخا كي مسساخا لشخاختي يخي عدنين مريم بين ملك مشيخ والمباد يخي عدنين مريم بين ملك مشيخ والمباد يخي عدنين مريم بين ملك مشيخ والمباد شيرماليس على دني باتر سالي كراسي بيانيني عدنا ياتي لنفسي مسفا شاكر ملاشن رمية ما يتن لخوا ما يوسف لاشن رمية خيت جيبار شنونم إم غاخ لير سامم أيالي كيغارتي مشخ شخانتي إم علي كدر Rabbi Shachnola Navshi Imsane Shalom. Ani Shalom Vechia Daber Hema Lamachama. Amatech Mazman Dabadian Khadrem Yamtari, Sagaf Shama Elihak, Vishaka, Ezra Hamikash Mitian Shadeka, Iskakama and Hasaka Velas Dash Michelle, Eaton Hall of Vagabotoska Mali, Yana Bishosa, Shamalay, Nico, Yamala, the Commissioner, Atiyaki, Share the name Shikai, Yane, Mishmaka, Jabik, Rosa, Yesha Yamina, Elavaraka, Belavas, Savannah, Mishima, and Rasker, Macarva, National Camera said, I deny Shema Khan, Vim Corino.
Thank you, Uri. Should continue being a source of nachas to your grandparents, parents, and the ganze mishpacha. There's a long lineup of speakers, as you saw on the flyers. So I just want to mention to all the speakers, kindly keep it short and sweet and to the point. To start off the evening, there is no greater honor to call upon a friend that attended Bedford and Dean together with my father-in-law, who then went on to become Mashpia Harashi to 770. It is with great respect and honor that I call upon Harav Achasid Rabbi Shlomo Zarchi and Mashpia to 770 to please come up and address the Kahal Kadosh. Menachem, go get the mashka from over there, the vodka.
I'm not a big speaker, just I knew Avrohom probably about 65, 67 years from here. When we were children, we used to go on the same school bus. I was in Brownsville, and he was further up, closer to eastern New York. So we drove, and he always spoke with me. It was a special Avrohom, very special young man. He was, and he felt always close to it. He asked me a Tanedrish, Asicha, years ago. He had a very good memory. Yeah. He always came with all different types of inganim that would not be glad to. No, fine. So he was a special person. We kind of now for each other and working. The Rebbe spoke a few times. He said it. We say in Shalos and Vachim, L'chaim and L'shalom, everybody enters Amen. Yeah. The Sosim, the Simcha, everybody enters Amen. The Shul, the Chami, we say the name of Amen. Why don't we say Amen? If you need a Yeshua and the Chami, it's hard to say Amen. The name of Amen, we have to say Amen, right? So, Kopanim, we're sitting in a Shloshim, and the Rabbi spoke, and was a lesson to everybody. It's in the Shloshim of the Rabbis and just coming from Chabdei Shabbat. The Rebbe said, even though with Shloshim, you have to end the Enoch and Tzai, but his heart hurts and still, so he's still not over with the Shloshim. The Rebbe, for everybody, was a lesson to people. It doesn't mean it's a Shloshim, it's very, Shloshim is a potato, so it has to, you have to have an effect on you. But the Rebbe said, if you have the Shloshim and his heart still hurts him, yeah. I'll call upon him. So it was a special young person, and you see, he was a special person. But from our days in Bethel, we had hundreds of kids. There was hardly any Lubavitcher kids in Yeshiva then, in Bethel and in Topshin. In those years, there was no Lubavitcher families, very small little kids. And most of the kids didn't end up in Lubavitch. It's the fault of the rabbis and the fault of the Lubavitcher kids that were in Yeshiva. We're not Makar those kids. But Avrohom was from those 5, 6 families, the Flints and the Alphas and the Greisman, another 6, 7 families that they stood in Lubavitch. That this group shows on a special in the Shomer that Avrohom had, that he's in everything. He better ways and he questioned and he went and he didn't. And then there was a Seder in Better than Din that put a mitzvah on. Bachar Balin Chassidus was able to go into Yechidus, yeah. So he also, if you learn Chassidus, was able to, Rabbi Tannenbaum was close to him, and he made an appointment, and every year he went into Yechidus. And knowing his matter was, his father passed away when he was a young age, and more things like this. And the other was Makarim a lot. Till he got older, the other sons, and they could be kisses on to Montreal. And later, he was in Montreal a few years before, till the other son. He had a very good memory. I don't have a good memory. So he used to come to me always with the stories, the decisions he wanted to mark.
Can you hear now? Do your thumbs up.
He grew up in a nice family. I'm
Can you hear
such a
me?
big kid in Gutenberg. I'm a small person. I don't have a
Kelly,
father that
put up
passed
your
away at
thumbs if you hear me.
a young age.
Yes,
He
thank
used to
you.
come into our mother every day. My father, 2 days in the 45 years, he didn't come into my mother. It's a very special thing. Children have their own lives. Maybe it's made it that way. Everybody's busy and we should be busy only with good things. But you have to make your mind that to go into your mama and Kabbalah and kibbutz, the Cheresh, and that's how life goes. You have to have the Cheresh and able to pay everybody back. And Mashiach is coming soon. It's only for a short time. All these, but he was a very special person. I used to drive with him for an hour in the school bus years ago, yeah. He used to have always questions and silent, even as a young kid and got older. Even now, whenever I saw him, he had what to say about Hashem. So he's a very special person. He grew up in a very special family, and 5 children. In Gan Eden, and the Rebbe takes care of his people. I remember all Basim, they used to say, it takes a long time to get in Gan Eden. And they were always wondering. I remember when my class passed away, the father came over to the Rabbi 2 days later. The Rabbi said, I just hope I'm swearing in Gan Eden have seen this. They were all wondering. But the Rabbi takes care of his people. He was one of the people that the Rabbi had on his mind. He guarded him his whole life. So I'm sure he's guarding his whole life. He's in a good spirit now. The Rabbi is taking care of him. And he's taking care of Gan Eden. He's a very good father and a very good Zayda. He's sure taking care of his family from there also. There's much more to say. There's more people speaking, but the good is showing the simchas in the family. I want to say, gesund, and everybody should go in his ways. And the good is, everybody should take upon himself something that you know that your father, your Zayda, would want you to do. And this is more than anything else. That the children and the Emet should take upon themselves something that you know the father had a geschmack in Migla or Chassidus or a certain minig, and take upon themselves. They will have like Mashiach should tanzen. Alle will sein, gesund und stark. And in the name of Rabbi here. Hi.
Thank you, Rabbi Zarchi, for the special words. Rabbi Shlomo, you started off saying that my Shved had an unbelievable memory. I just want to tell you a quick story. He learned in Montreal, in Yeshiva Gdela, before he came back. In other words, between Bedford and Dean in 770, he learned in Montreal. So, also mentioned on his Matzev, it says, so he's in Montreal, every Shabbos Mevarachim, they used to send down Bachrim to come and to listen to the Fabrengen, and then come back to Montreal with notes and Chazir Ibn the Fabrengen. So the one time that my father-in-law went from Montreal to New York to listen to the Fabrengen and come back, I forgot who the Mashpia, somebody said the story. Was it you, Rabbi Gerlitsky? Rabbi Gerlitsky, right? Senior. So he asked him, no, Avram, whatever he called him, he said, where are the notes? He says, notes? By me, there's no notes. By me, everything is in the mind. So he was, he knew his talent. Okay. The next speaker, I actually heard about the first time when I was in Morristown Yeshiva. Had a relationship with Rabbi Untitled Chapter, who also just passed away this year. And Rabbi Zelikson was going to come to the yeshiva to Fabreng. I don't know if you remember this, Rabbi Zelikson, but he came to Morristown once in Fabrach. This is in 98, I think. Y2K, I was on Shlichus in South Africa. So yes, it had to be 1998, 1999. And he became so excited when Hanhalas Yeshiva said that the Rabbi Zelikson is coming to Fabreng. He says, "Oi, Rabbi Zelikson, he speaks mamish like the Rebbe. He speaks mamish like the Rebbe." So I remember then that one of the members of Hanhalas told him, he said, he doesn't speak mamish like the Rebbe. He speaks the Rebbe's words. He speaks the Rebbe's words. Without further ado, we would like to call upon the Yedid of the Mishpacha, a friend of the family, Rabbi Zelikson, needs no introduction, to come up and please address.
Find ourselves with the Shloshim, as the Rabbi mentions, it's mentioned also in Kabbalah, that it's a certain time period when the Neshama has its own aliyah, its own shleimus, and the Rabbi always taught us, the Inyan of Achayit and Alibe, that the living take to heart, So there were a few experiences that I had with Rabbi Avrohom b'meshech of the years. I remembered him from Swan Lake in camp. He was then it was in sports. It was a baseball game, and at a good. He was very good in that. And over the years, there were occasions by L'chaims, other occasions that we used to meet, and we would sit down and talk, and he always had questions. He would ask a question, B'negir to da yem yem. He used to gribble, he used to really delve into it, and to understand it. And it was Pashat Be'iyun, it was something that you saw, it was negir to him, it pertained to him, it touched him, and he really wanted to get to the bottom of it. Sometimes it would be Mekadas of Inyanim that he asked, but it was a Pashat, the way we saw him, whenever I saw him, he was always looked serious, looked involved, looked deep in thought. It wasn't Stam Emetzat, was just choleming or just looking around, but he was really involved in whatever was on his mind, and basically it was in Yanim of Teira, as he had his chayes was Bechal chayes from learning and from Fabrengen, and the Rebbe's Fabrengen, and weiter. Everything is Bashgacha Pratis, and as the Rebbe mentions that, especially when it comes to Kvios, a calendar setting when an event takes place, so it's mentioned also in the Matzeva that it says that it was Parsha Va'era El Avrohom. The name of the Baal Shloshim is also Avrohom, and the second name is Michal, two names. The Tzad HaShaveh, when we compare the two names, both of them are the Inyan of Chesed. There's the Inyan of the Chesed as it was in the Shama Beguf Avrohom Avinu, and then there is the Malach Shal Chesed, the Inyan of Malach Michal. By Avrohom Avinu we find that he was a Gemel Chesed, Begufei, B'mamene, B'nafsi, B'mamene. That says he was generous, Sai Begufei, and physically, and Sai B'mamene, in a financial way, and also B'nishmasi with the soul. Avrohom Avinu we find also that it was the Inyan of Eshel. That it was the Inyan of Eshel that had in, and as the Mefarshim explained, that Eshel is the Rosh Teves, Achila Shtia Levia, Achila Shtia Lina. There's two versions. One is the Inyan of eating, drinking, and staying overnight, or the second one is Achila Shtia Levia, is escorting the person. And the Matzevit says, Beisi Pasuach Lervocha, that his house was open in a very wide way, al derech like by Avrohom Avinu, side Inyan of eating, side Inyan of drinking, and a Bezicha Reichet that the people needed to stay over. It was Pasher open lakel, Pasuach lakel. Al derech zeh we find B'negir the Askonis of the Niftar, that he was very involved, Pashet, in making sure that people should have Mazin Levush Bayis. He worked in the community council, which was basically to make sure that you didn't need what they need. It was to service the Teishvei Hashchuna, and all kinds of problems that went through there. See, a person had problems with Parnasa, another person had problems with the house, with the residents, and other inyanim that came through their office. The Mele, he was pashat involved in Muslim Levush Bayis of Yidden that were needy and needed pashat help. Al derech ze also beruchnis we find benegir to Avrohom Avinu, that by Avrohom Avinu he was mashpia. He announced for the whole world the Inyan of Achdus Hashem, the oneness of Hashem, and basically that's how he had, as the Rambam writes, masses of people that came, that followed him, how he taught them the Inyan of Achdus Hashem. By Rabbi Avrohom we find the Inyan of Mivtzoyim, that he was involved in Mivtzoyim. And although there were also other inyanim that pertain to his private life, mitzat schedules, v'chulu, but still he found time and used the energy pashet to bring mezaka yidden with mivtzoyim, with the kiyam hamitzvahs. In addition, for those that were at the Fabrengen and they didn't understand Yiddish, they never spoke in Yiddish, so b'meila he was there to translate the Fabrengen for these people. Although he himself understood the Fabrengen, he remembered the Fabrengen, but Rafa Pikain, he shared it also with them, that they should be able to understand the Fabrengen, and in addition to that, also would review the Fabrengen, would chazed the Fabrengen in the shul in Kal Hasidim, which was basically to be mezaka others. And again, this was also going out from himself. It's not a poshet inyan to stand by the Fabrengen the whole day, And sometimes we have to bring his mamish to come at the end of Shabbos. And then a person comes home, he's exhausted, but he made sure that it has to go further. The Rebbe wants that it shouldn't just remain there, but it has to go further. B'meila, he's sharing it with others, and B'shas Maisa also translating for those that don't understand Yiddish and are standing there and just to be there by the Rebbe. Al derech zeh b'negeya to Avrohom Avinu, we find that the Ptira of Avrohom Avinu was in Chedesh Teves. As it's mentioned in Svarim, in Dvarim B'Yemei, in other places that it says to cover B'Seva Teva, so it says to cover B'Seva Teva, the Rosh Teves, backwards spells out the union of Chedesh Teves. The Yachadim Zeh also was Chavov Teves, which Chavov is B'Gematria Shem Havaya, and this is basically how it was demonstrated and how he actually expressed it in Yonim of bringing down Elikus to the world around him, Sayin Limad Anigla, Sayin Limad Achsides, himself, exerting himself, Poshet Horeven in Limad Atera. Al-Derazah, the second name, is the name of a Malach of the Yidden. The Malach of the Jewish nation is the second name of the Niftar Machal, which basically protects the Jewish nation. In the same sense also, he interested himself in the welfare, in the well-being of Poshet Echov, Teshri HaShchuna, those that were from the Shchuna, and also even after it, and even before that, he was a Mu'urivim Habriyas, very social, involved with people, close with people in a very sincere way. Al-Derech, the name, the second name is B'Gematria, the numerical value is B'Gematria 101. The 101, the Rebbe taught us the difference, as the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, the 100 is the usual pattern of learning that they learned in the time of the Talmud. They learned 100 times every subject. When it came to learning 101, that was an exertion, that was an addition and something over the regular limit, over the regular framework. So by him, we also saw that he did things, although there was yigia, there was exertion needed, but Afal Pikein, he put himself aside to accomplish what he needed to accomplish for the public. Al derech he also taught the family the same inyan. When he picked up, the Rebbe said by Fabrengen, when he gave a certain quote of a Maimer of the Friedrich Rebbe, in Tofrish Peizayin, Yud Beis Tammuz, the Friedrich Rebbe ends the Maimer, so he made sure that every one of his family members should know it by heart. Was he given the inyan in them? So I happened to look it up last night. So it's twice in a Sikha that the Rebbe said in Topshem Mem Zayin 34 years ago. It was Yud Beis Tammuz time, and the Rebbe was speaking then that in order to bring down Teva and Brocha, since we need it, it was a time then that the Rebbe spoke about Inyan, which was not a positive Inyan. So the Rebbe said, B'meila, the Inyan of Teva Brocha is al derech, like the Friedrich Rebbe says in the Maimer, concludes the Maimer of a Yud Beis Tammuz, Tofrish Peizayin, which was 60 years earlier than that year. It's mentioned also that the Inyan of the Rebbe once told the Chassid that became 72 years old. So the Rebbe told him, as Mispar Yamecha Amale, I think the Balaturi mentions, he's Begematria, Amale is Begematria 72. So although this is nicht mamish 120, but I'll call upon him in full years, in a contentful way, the way that Rabbi Avrohom worked, Rabbi Avrohom Michal worked, which was basically Sai mit sich and Sai with the Zulas with others. So it was a full life, Vifal Seshaya Zogen, a person, when we look even in Nusach HaMatzeva, very impressive, Poshet, how a person had time to manage all these inyanim. So the Rebbe der helfen, das soll sein, wa kitze veranen und sheichni yofa. And b'meila zayin dinge von Gula, meet again together here, Nishamas Begufim, as the Rebbe once mentioned, b'negia to those that passed away more recent, that by them it was more shaykh, the kitze veranen, no quicker yet than others that are already not with us a longer period. Mizol dazen beini basar.
Thank you, Rabbi Zelikson. You're the second person this week that connected my father-in-law. He used to koch in the Friedrich Rebbe Sichas. Rabbi Jacobson sent a little clip of Nicham Avelim, and he also said the Shveretz gekocht in the Frierdiker Rebbe Sichas Asach. Incidentally, everybody, those of you who know the story with Rabbi Gerelik, who went to Milan to be interviewed for a Stella as a Rav. So the Rebbe told him what Masechta to prepare. You kind of covered already what my brother-in-law was going to cover with V'zui Teres, V'zui Avedas HaChasidus. In your bags, you have these little printed pieces of paper that are plastified, and there's a little magnet on the back so you can put it on your fridge. And being that the Shredder Kochten them, so all the grandchildren actually learned this by heart. So we're going to ask Moshe Minkovich to please come up and say V'zui Avedas HaChasidus by heart in memory of Saba and the Shver and Abba.
Zui Avedas HaChasidus lesser call middle like Ivor the barrel Zafa Ola Lisa Lakada Shal Yan Li Gila Shema Vaya Ba'elam of them Shechem Bracha Ba'elam the Shema Vaya Hu Bracha Verachim V'Kolitai.
Okay, thank you. This is just one, by the way. They all learned it by heart in honor of their grandfather. Rabbi Zelikson, you mentioned Beisai Pasuach L'Revacha, as I mentioned before. I just forgot to mention before that this was, and not only that, but that he was legging Klei Kodesh, everything it's Gekach in London, and everything was about the Rebbe and about Bittul. This obviously is to be mentioned that this was not something that the average person can do. This was because his Akeres Abayis, my dear mother-in-law, allowed him to lead such a life of Kodesh, a life of Rebbe. Not only allowed him, she pushed him to. This was their life together. There was nothing else but. So at this point, I'd like to give another bracha to my, they're going to kill me up there in men's club, it's like I'm giving my mother-in-law so many brachas. But nonetheless, Shviger, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bench you should further continue these things. And the Rebbe once expressed himself about the Frierdiker Rebbe, Hu Chai Yitonu B'Gashmias. Rabbi Zelikson, is that true? I remember Rebbe says, Chai Yitonu B'Gashmias. So to me and to us, the Shred is living with us, B'Gashmias. We have 950 plus grandchildren and such a big, beautiful family that you can actually stand up and say, Zeis Shali. For the next speaker, this goes back many, many years to Montreal. As I said before, my father-in-law learned in Montreal. And when there, he befriended a family by the last name of Gerlitsky. And he became Pashat Ben Bayis, developed a close relationship to the brothers. And also the brother-in-law, Rabbi Mati Berger, Olav Hashalom, Zechareinu Levracha, became extremely, extremely close. And I remember he used to speak about him at the Shabbos table. He used to go, Mati. He's very, very close. So as a Ben Bayis, we thank you for that. And we would like to call up Rabbi Gerlitsky to please come up and say a couple of words in honor of our father-in-law, Olav Hashalom.
The main thing of how I know him is that from Tafshin Lamed, after Chasana, so Avrohom was by us, Mamash Ben Bayis. Every Shabbos he would come, and with Mamash a pleasure to have him. He would tell stories and Fabreng. Was very, very geschmack. I thought that it's appropriate in this occasion to explain what is the inyan of Shloshim. What is the Shloshim? What's so special about Shloshim? The Gemara in Mayat Cotton says that 3 days lepchi, 7 days lehesped, lemisped, and Shloshim le'eva. Avelis in general is for 30 days. And the Gemara says that by Rabbeinu HaKadosh, when he was nifter, the people wanted to make Avelis for him for a whole year, entire year. But the Chapter by Moshe Rabbeinu says that Vayivku Beis Yisrael ba'arbeis me'av shleishim yom. So they figured if by Moshe Rabbeinu is 30 days, so should be by Rabbeinu HaKadosh also for 30 days. But what is the inyan of shleishim? There's a famous sefer Ma'aver Yabuk, who is a big mekubal, and he explains like this. He says the neshama leaves this world, which is called Elam HaAsiyah, and it elevates itself higher and higher. And each Elam, there's Asiyah, then comes Yetzira, Bria, and Atzilus. Every Elam has 10 spheres. The 10 spheres is there in every Elam. And every day, the neshama elevates itself one level from the sphere. So let's say after 10 days, the neshama leaves Elam HaAsiyah and it comes to Elam HaYetzira. 10 days more from Yetzira to Bria. After 30 days, then the neshama goes out from Bria to Elam HaAtzilus, where there it says, La Yagur Chara. See, and it says, by Elam HaAsiyah is Rubai is Ra. Yetzira is Machza al Machza. Bria is Rubai Taiv. Being that there's still Ra in the three Elamis, so there could be Ketrugim on the Neshama. The Ra, which is there, Klippa and so on, that could be Mekatrik on the Neshama. So therefore, the 30 days is the time when every day the neshama elevates in these Elamais. Being that it's possible it should be kitruk on neshama, so that is why it's very important that Krevim and so on have the inyan of Avelus, different things. It's not convenient. Like the mission says, you're not allowed to press your clothes, you're not allowed to take a haircut and so on. And that is, in this, with the family and so on, they prava avelis in this tsar, so this helps for the neshama, that the ketrugim, that this goes and this helps the neshama to be Elam. Now, Elam Atzilus is kulei teiv. So Yom HaShloshim is the 30th day that the neshama leaves totally these three Elamis and elevates itself to Elam Atzilus, where there is no Ra at all. But as we know, always Hakel Helech Achar Achitum, the end is always the most important. That's why he writes in Ma'aver Yavuk that the day of Shloshim is very important, that people should add, to give this extra push for the neshama, to add in Stoka, Maisim Tevim, learn Mishnayos, learn Torah, especially children, 8 o'clock and so on. Why? Because he was mechanech them. So when they're doing Maisim Tevim, this helps the neshama even more to finally leave the Elam, the three Elamis, and go in to Elam Atzilus, where it's Lo Yagur Chara. That is the inyan of Shloshim, the way he explains in Ma'aver Yavuk. Now, I'd like to say a word which the Rebbe once wrote, a very interesting word. The Rebbe said, Shchonorach in Yeridea Shin Tzadik Dalet. So there's the first sif that he starts off, that if somebody does Avelis very, very strongly, very more than it's necessary. So it says they're very, very bad, very bad einish. Then the last sif it says, if somebody does not prava Avelis, so then he's achzori, he's like very cruel if he doesn't prava Avelis. So the Rebbe says, like the first sif and the last sif, if Avelis is something which he's supposed to do, what's the problem if he's doing it so much more? If it's not so important, so what's the problem if he doesn't do it? Why is he achzori? It seems like there's something here in between. Why? So the Rebbe explains like this. Everyone knows there's a guf and there's a neshama. That is very, very obvious. Everyone understands that even when the guf leaves this world, The neshama, which is a chelik alikami mal mamish, is for sure a neshama nitzchis. It's a chelik alikami mal. There's no chas v'sham. There's no hefsek in the neshama. The neshama keeps on living. Ba'efen nitzchi. And not only that, when the neshama came down to this world, was yerida l'tzerech aliyah, through the aveda of the neshama in this world, mitzvahs, ma'asim tevim, learning Torah, and so on, that elevates the neshama much, much more than it was before it came down. Yerida tzerech aliyah. So b'meil zazeh, mitzad the neshama is nitzchi. Not only that, the neshama even has a simcha that he's now l'mayla, close to Hashem, and not much higher than it was before. Tzerech aliyah was much, much, much higher. On the other hand, mitzad the guf, in the fort, there's a chsaron in this world, especially to close friends, family and friends and so on. And if he would have been here, he would be able to do more. So because of this, that is why we have to mourn as well. Those who care about this person and his neshama, there's an inyan of simcha. The neshama is now free and it's close to the Eibishter and so on. However, on the other hand, mitzad haguf, then there's a verse. So that was the Rebbe says. That's why it has to be a center lane. Too much, it shows if you're misabel means you don't believe in the neshama nitzchis, and you don't even care what the neshama now is more happier that it's closer and it was elevated, say the chaliyah and so on. On the other hand, if you don't do anything, it shows you don't care at all. So that is the reason why of both halachas, not miskasha yesmedai is not right, and the same thing. On the other hand, if you don't do any misabel klal, it's called achzari. We mentioned before Rabbi Avrohom, everyone knows. When he was young, he had difficulties. He was Leolani, he was a yotzim at a young age. And he also had a lot of friends in Bedford, which weren't exactly, Lubavitch. But even though I know many friends that he had, and he always kept. And he was very friendly with all of them, mamish. All of them. But by him was something, Ediz Ananda Inyan. He was totally devoted. He was zeiche that the Rebbe guided him very much. We know the Rebbe told him, there's a lot of nisyanis for him to go to college. His mother wanted him to go to college and so on. And the Rebbe got involved and he went to yeshiva and he was mamish totally a makusha to the Rebbe in Gansen. His memory was mentioned already before, the story that his Adam said, which, my father, because I used to type, the sikhas. So general, that was Tafshin Chav Hey, was every week the Rebbe verbringt. And every week they would send a Zacha Begeirel, and the Bachim would always take my papers of the sikhas, and my father would always come, you have my Avrohom's, always. He comes over once to Avrohom, Rabbi Flint, all the Shalom. He said, he says, ich darf nicht, ich hab das alles done. And my father no, but this is how I heard, that his chazara, they said they never heard such a good chazara. Such klorkai by him, that I can tell you is, to me it was like an encyclopedia. Whatever I would ask him, he would know. In Yanim, in everything. And he would bring it out so clear, it's unbelievable. It's like the Gemara in Heidi, it says, a machlekes, what is stronger, Sinai or Eika Harim? Sinai is somebody who's a big bucky. He knows a lot of things. He knows halacha, Sinai, but he doesn't go in so much into the depth. He's not a pilpul. Then there's Eika Harim, somebody who is a fapul. And the Gemara says, some say, this is better. And the Gemara Firteis, Shalchu mitam, they sent him as Yisrael. You should know Sinai Odiv. Sinai is better. Why? Because everyone needs the master of the wheat. In order to bake bread, you need Mora de Chita. So you have to have everything ready. Well, the Avrohom for sure was a big Mora de Chita. I mean, for sure. Whenever I needed something, Avrohom would always be and explain everything so clear. And interesting, he would tell us stories. He could tell the same story 40 years later and was word by word, you remind yourself, didn't change anything. Unbelievable. I mean, yeah, and he was talking about kusha, and it's a koch always in the Rebbe's and Yonim, there's no question. I just want to finish up with a word that I saw lately. There's a Gemara in Psachim that says, Loi ka'elam hazeh elam haba. Elam hazeh and elam haba is different, but Mashiach will come. But elam hazeh, al shmueis teves, if somebody hears good news, he says, Baruch ateva meitev. Al shmueis rais, not good, he says, Baruch dainu emes. The elam haba, they're only going to say ateva meitev. Mashiach will come only to. So the question is, from the Gemara, it seems like that there's a difference in the brachas. The brachas will change. The brachas won't change. The difference is, the Elam Hazeh, there is what to say Ateva Meitiv. L'asad Lavei, there'll only be things to say Ateva Meitiv. What is the difference in the brachas? So, the Delam Farshim, the Slach brings down from Samagim, he says a very good word. He says like this, now, when things le'aleinu don't go the way it's supposed to go, le'aleinu, being that we are in Golus, in the Cheshach Kafel Nechutel, we think it's Taka Rachman Latzlan, it's bad. But it says, Mepi Elyein, Le'teitze, the Ebishus, Tev Atev Le'etev. So the truth is, La'mitis La'inyan, the Ebishter knows everything and it's Tev. We can't see it in Golus because there's a Cheshach. But truthfully, it is the Tev. The Eibush has his reasons to be mezachach a person, v'chulu, v'chulu, v'chulu. But that's one thing for sure. So B'meila teaches us la'asid lavei, this time, and when Elam Hazeh begolus is taka, it's both brachas. When it's something bad, we say bracha, baruch dainem, ma'shein kein aber la'asid lavei. Then when the Eir will be revealed, and we'll see the truth of everything, the Amitis Inyan, everyone will see already that everything was Tev. What we thought Rahman al-Islam is no good is the Emes and Amita is Tev. So that's what he says. We will make HaTev HaMeitiv even on the brachas which here, the Elam Hazeh, we said the other bracha, the Asad Lavi, on these things alone, we will say HaTev HaMeitiv. And he teaches, that's what Yeshaya says. Eitcha Hashem ki anaftabi. The pasuk in Yeshaya, I thank you Hashem, because you were angry at me and there's things that happened that wasn't good. So he says that's the pshat. La'asad lavei, we will see the truth that it was everything l'tevas ha'adam. So meila eitcha Hashem, then we will thank Hashem for everything else. Anyways, all David to helfen, Avram. Loshen Chaval al Be'abdim v'lei Mishtakrim. So they wish to helfen. Let me bring out one more thing about Chesed. It happened once when we were Bachrim in the dormitory. We had a dormitory 788 upstairs, and Rabbi Avrohom, Alav Shalom, woke up late for Kaporis. Does he? This time he was up learning, and he woke up late, so everything was closed. So he went to the market, took a train, whatever, bought a chicken, brought it back, came up to our apartment, we were Zeicha, and he started Kaporis. But what should he do? So he left it in the dormitory by us in the apartment, and he was such a Balteva, every day would make sure to bring up crumbs to feed the chicken. And the chicken had left till Hanukkah. I don't know why. That was it. It's an apartment, That was his. It was unbelievable. Anyways, all Davish to help and Taka that he should be a male teacher for his Baruch Hashem, his great family, the Kinder, the Einiklach, the Edims, everyone, the Schneers, and He should be made Eispel Lamaila for everyone, and Eispel Beikir, but that's the Ikir. So sein Akitzu Veran Sheikh Offer, Bekaret Mamish, Beteke Biat Mamish. L'chaim, l'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Yeah. Okay. Jacobson, you ready? Okay. Yeah. Rabbi Galitsky, thank you for the Vadim Beverter. Rabbi Galitsky, thank you for the warm words. You know, we cover ground. We're not built both people. So the next speaker, I might as well call up my own father-in-law. He's not here, but he was once walking down the street, and this next speaker's own mother thought that my father-in-law was her son, almost hugged the man. It's a true story. True story. They were very much Dema. They were very good friends. They always spoke in learning, two brilliant heads, brilliant minds. Just want to say one thing that Rabbi Galitsky mentioned, that he was able to say a story from 40 years ago, exactly b'diuk how he said it. So one of the little videos that your brother sent, Yosef Yitzchak of Nichem Avelim, he said that he used to spend his summers up in the Catskill Mountains in Evergreen Estates. So when my father-in-law came for Shabbos, he loved the place. He used to stay by the Langs or by us. And one of the things that Yosef Yitzchak says, well, he said it to me several times, but he said it in the video. He always used to ask my wife, is your father coming for Shabbos? She says, yes, why? She says, now I really have to prepare. Because he used to push a go over to him and tell him, das ich verstanden, das sei gut, und ich gesagt, das sei richtig. So he was a ish meduyek. It is with great honor and pleasure that I call upon Rav Baruch Jacobson, a close friend. And you know what? You weren't here in the beginning, but a kluge Mensch, efter kommen verschreiben Eier Adress for Mendel, for those of you who understand. Rabbi Jacobson, bechavod, is frische Maschke.
Chaim lebracha. Hast du ein bisschen Wasser? One of the stories that stands out most in my mind that Rabbi Flint told me, I have a minute, I ask a lot of bachrim that are older than me, younger light that are older than me, what was the minute with Rabbeinu Tams in their age? Because when we were bar mitzvah in Tavshin Lamed Vav in 1976, the Rebbe introduced a new mitzvah, put him 10 days before my birthday. My father had to go get me Rabbeinu Tams. That every bar mitzvah boy should put on Rabbeinu Tams every day. Till then, most, from what I heard from my brother and from other people, when they turned 18, they should put on Rabbeinu Tam. They used to ask the Rebbe first. I asked a lot of people, and actually, younger light from London told me that even before Lamed Vav, bar mitzvah boys put on Rabbeinu Tams. I never verified it, but I heard that in England, Anash put on Rabbeinu Tams from bar mitzvah. Anyway, I went over to Rabbi Flint one day, and I said to him, what happened with you and Rabbeinu Tams? He says, I'll tell you what happened. He says, my birthday is in Svira, someday in Eir. Yud Aleph Eir. I went on Yechidus before my 18th birthday, a few weeks before that, Pesach time. He told me what year it was. Could it be Chav Zayin? No. Anyway, I forget what year it was. And in the zettel, in the note that he wrote to the Rebbe, for the Yechidus, when you came in, you didn't talk. You just gave a note in, and the Rebbe would read the note. Sometimes he would put on his glasses, and it was only you and the Rebbe, and the Rebbe would respond to your note. In the note, he mentions various things. He didn't tell me anything else, but one of the things was, my 18th birthday is coming up in a few weeks, should I start putting on a Ben Tams? That was the minute for an 18-year-old boy to ask in those days. When it came to that point in the letter, the Rebbe said to Rabbi Flint, Legen a Ben Tams is a gleiche Zach. Now, I repeated this story many times, and every time Rabbi Flint would correct me in the finest detail of the words. I know that if there's thunder, it's because Avram Michal is trying to correct me. So I'm going to get most of it right. Legen Rabbeinu Tam, the Rebbe told him, is a gleiche Zach. It's a good thing. To put on Rabbeinu Tam is a good thing. In other words, yes. But it has nothing to do with your 18th birthday. Because Rabbi Flint connected it in a few weeks. I'll have time to buy the film. I'll stop putting on for my 18th birthday. The Rebbe said, no, it has nothing to do with your 18th birthday. When should you start putting them on? Fang an zu legen der Rabbeinu Tams. Then there was Kennen legen ze jede Tag. One of the Tanoim, one of the conditions that Rebbe made with most Bachrim who asked if they could put on a Ben Tams was you should have your own, because once you start putting them on, you don't stop. And if you don't have your own, you start traveling and you're going to borrow. This way, if you have your own, so the Rebbe said, when there was Kennen legen jede Tag, when you'll be able to do it every single day, that's when you should start. And Avrohom Michal told me I didn't wait a week. I didn't wait till my birthday. The next day, I put on a Ben Tams. I had my own, and I put them on. By the Shiva, I always looked as a very big schus that I had an opportunity to be a friend of a special person like Avrohom Michal. So I took what I thought was the best Masechta to honor his neshama, and that's Sanhedrin. And one of his sons called me last night, how's Sanhedrin doing? And I pictured the Sanhedrin in Yerushalayim, because when you're learning Sanhedrin, they describe how it looked. It was like a semicircle. So I said, it's going great. Vashgocha Pratis, in chapter 6 of Sanhedrin, there's a Mishnah that connects this story that I just told about the Rabbeinu Tams and this final stage of Rabbi Avrohom Michal's life. The Mishnah says, Amar Rabbi Meir said, when somebody is suffering or someone is in pain, what is Hashem saying? When someone is suffering and someone is struggling, so to speak, what does Hashem say? And the Mishnah answers, Kalani miroishi, Kalani mizrahi. My head is heavy, my head is hard, is difficult, and my arm is difficult. And from all the expressions, in other words, Hashem it feels the pain of a person. And we know that when a person passes away, if he suffered, and it was a long time that Avrohom Michal is in a lot of pain, the Mishnah says that it's Kalani Miraishi, Kalani Mizrei. Hashem is complaining that his head hurts and his hand hurts. I forgot the end of the story with the Rabbeinu Tams, and now I'm reminded. The Rebbe said, when Avrohom Michal left the Rebbe's room, the Rebbe picked up his hand, and at the minute was we walked out of the Rebbe's room backwards, not to turn our back on the Rebbe. And the Rebbe picked up his hand, as like escorting him, and he said, "On the Iker, the most important thing is shibud halev v'hamoyach. When you put on tefillin to bind your arm, your arm facing your heart and your head." And this Mishnah describes those two things. Ashgacha Pratis, when I learned the Mishnah, I was very, very excited that it reminded me of this personal story that Avrohom Michal told me of Kalani Miraishi, which represents the head tefillin, and Kalani Mizroi, which represents the arm tefillin. One Rabbi Minkovich mentioned my brother's speeches in Evergreen. And Avrohom Michal would listen and if there was a mistake, he would correct it. But there was something else besides my brother's speeches, not just Yitzchak, my older brother also. And Avrohom Michal would always hint it to me and to them as well. You all know that they speak very detailed, elaborately. And Avrohom Michal was more of a mekatzer b'dibure. Avrohom Michal was emer ma'at v'aseh harbei. So Avrohom Michal had a quote from the Friedrich Besichos. He told it to me and to my brothers many times. He says, Gershom Ber, our grandfather is Gershom, my father's father. Well, my father's name is Gershom Ber, Gershom Ber. He's named after a famous chassid brought down in the Sichos of the Friedrich Ber was Makabal, a lot of stories from Gershom Ber, who saw that Tzemach Tzedek, Reb Marash, Reb Ashab, and the Reb Ashab told that Gershom Ber, Paharet, his name was, he was from Pahar, tell my son, when the Friedrich Ber was a little boy, tell him all the stories you saw by the Rabbeim. Because we're talking about all the Tzemach Tzedek, Marash, and Rashab. So the Friedrich Rebbe quotes these stories in his name. So Rabbi Flint would say, in the name of the Friedrich Rebbe, Gershom Ber gewen a mekatzer b'diburei. He didn't explain why he told us this expression, but he finally, one of my brothers, Avrohom Michal, meets him in the street, and he says, Sefer HaSichos, this and this, page this and this. He told him exactly where it is, and Simon, my brother, tells me how that. Then he understood why he's telling him this story. So I'm going to try. I mean, Minkovich made a bakasha, but to honor a person like Rabbi Flint and his family, to chap, I don't think chapping is the right way. So let me just get through my few points, and then I will let you be. I'm a shliach in a university in Manhattan called Hunter College. And my shlichus is from the Rebbe. Rabbi Chadakov called me once in the middle of the night about Russian Jews. I'm not going to get into that. It's not about me. It's about Rabbi Flint. But the shlichus is very personal. It was direct. Rabbi Chadakov himself called me and gave me a shlichus with Russian kids, which Hunter College has many students from Russia. But I have to say that I'm also a shliach in Hunter College from one of the Rebbe's chassidim, and his name is Avrohom Michal Flint. A few times, Rabbi Flint said to me that there's a lady that works in Hunter College, and she used to work at my office. I don't know which office it was. I never verified. I can't find the notes where I wrote down her name. But he gave me a distinct shlichus. Since she's not in my office anymore, and she needs kidduv, but she's in Hunter College, so Rabbi Flint remembered there's a shliach in Hunter College, and I'm sending you on a shlichus to work with this lady what I could not do. And it's funny, because this also connects to Mishnah and Sanhedrin and our resemblance. You all know, it was mentioned just now, that Rabbi Flint and I look alike. Both I and Rabbi Flint were mistaken by many people, including family members. My mother thought he was I, and one of his daughters saw me walking on the street, and she crossed the street on a Friday night, I believe it was, because she thought I was her father, a daughter. And we joked about it often, him and I. In fact, once we switched glasses in shul, and because with the glasses, you could tell the difference between two people. You have shorter ones, but once we switched the glasses and our beards were brushed out exactly the same shape, if you squint, you'll see a very close similarity. My wife claims it's lahadam. It's not true, but that's a wife knows best. But the rest of us, and we took a picture, and the girls found the picture, they sent it, and I got it roundabout. Anyway, why am I connecting this? Because the Mishnah says something very interesting in Perek Daled. Beautiful Mishnah. Everyone knows that the Mishnah, the famous Mishnah, B'Shvili Nivra Ha'olam. Chayev Adam Leima B'Shvili Nivra Ha'olam. But that's just the middle of the Mishnah. There's a whole Hemshech. It's one of the longest Mishnayos that there are. I never compared all the Mishnayos. Rabbi Galitsky in the Hadassah Tmimah will correct me if it's the longest Mishnah or not. The Mishnah asks, why was man created single? Should have been a whole country, a whole nation. The Eibishter wanted a milas haaretz. He wanted a dira b'tachtenim, so he can create 1 million people, 100 people, 1,000. Why do you have to wait for Adam and Chava and Cain and Hevel and the whole journey? Why did he create a bunch of people? That's the Mishnah's shaila. And the Mishnah gives a bunch of answers. One of the answers is because Chayav Adam loima b'shvili nivra olam. Every person has to think of himself as Adam. I'm the only one, even though there's 7 billion people. For my shlichus, there's only one person, and that's me. I'm Adam. And one of the other answers is because this shows on Hashem's wonder, the miracle of creation. Adam was a mold. Adam was a man. We were all created we were all children of Adam. Yet, when you create a mold, if you're in a factory and you create a prototype, all the coins that you make from that mold, all the matbeyas, are going to be the same exact like the original. To switch it, you have to make a change. Yet, Hashem, he creates one man, and every one of us is different. That's a tremendous miracle. One mold, and yet everybody that comes out of the mold is different, except in our case. That's what comes to my attention. For some reason, and I never thought about it till tonight, Hashem, from all the people that created in this Mishnah, where there's one mold and everybody else looks different, brothers a lot of times look different, but we're complete strangers as far as Begashmis is concerned. And now when I realize that I have this shlichus, besides, of course you say, Yehuda Ve'ed L'Kra, you can't compare the shlichus of a Rebbe to a Chassid is a shtik Rebbe. When I could think about that, I have a shlichus, a responsibility to Rabbi Flint, to find a neshama in Hunter College that he feels is still part of his shlichus. I understand why Hashem, one of the reasons why Hashem might have chosen that the two of us are alike, because we all know the famous expression, Shluchai Shaladam Kamoisai. So if I'm a shliach, in the dress, we all look like the Rebbe, we wear the Rebbe's hat, we wear the Rebbe's clothes. But when people see me, when the lady in Hunter sees me, she's going to think I'm Flint. So it's Shluchai Shaladam Kamoisai. I'm about ready to end. Just one more vart. There's a Mishnah that the Avrohom say every day 3 times. Most people, I don't think, know the meaning of the Mishnah. We were once by a Sikha, Chaf'av, the Rebbe spoke in honor of his father. I know I'm over time. Just give me I have one more thing and that's it. The Rebbe by a Sikha Chaf'av in honor of his father, after Mincha, after he said the Mishnah, as the Chazan, the Rebbe got up by a microphone and spoke a Sikha to the kids of camp. Gan Yisrael would come in every year for Chafal, and the Rebbe explained that Machet, my father, the Baal HaYortzai, the Baal HaElula, says the Mishnah is not talking about, first the Rebbe said Machet, the Rebbe sang it in Natun, even though most of the people in Shul were adults, but since there were kids there, the Rebbe taught it like a Mishnayos class. Machet in Natun. Machet, the Rebbe said, Anodel. And from then on, I knew what a machet was. Otherwise, I heard the Chazanim say, Machshav, you don't even know what a machet is. The Rebbe said it slowly, machet, anodel. And then the Rebbe explained like this, that the needle is not, in the Mishnah, is only a moshel. The Mishnah is talking about something else entirely. The Mishnah is talking about the neshama. A son is saying Kaddish now for his father. He's talking about a needle because it's too personal. But the truth is he's talking about his father. Every neshama, in this case the father, is a needle. Why? What's a needle? A needle on the one hand is a keli. A keli that you use, on the one side of a needle there's a hole. And on the other side of the needle is very, very pointy. And that's a neshama. A neshama on the one side is very, very bittul. It's humble. It's a keli. Where Eid Hashem, this is a paraphrasing of Lekutei Levi Yitzchak, where the Rabbi Levi wrote to the Rebbe a letter about this. A thread of Hashem, Eid, a kav v'chut, it's a lashon from the Arizal. Kav v'chut, a line of godliness, a thread of godliness, it can be drawn into the hole of the needle, and then the other side of the needle can stick the itself into a garment, and you can add a sleeve, you can add a button or an ornament. The Rebbe then said that if the second side of the needle wasn't pointy, you wouldn't be able to get the thread through. And not that the thread tears the garment, damages the garment. The needle has a strength, a tkifis, a force, and a sharpness. It's stechedik in Yiddish. Stechedik means it's pricky. Not to tear the garment, because then what's the purpose? The job was to make the garment beautiful. The Rebbe describes it in a very gentle way that the needle pushes two threads aside. The strength of the needle pushes two threads aside so that the needle can get in there and bring in the Eid Hashem and make this beautiful garment. I told this and then it becomes Tameh. The question is why and how. We're not going to get into the whole Mishnah now. And so you have to put it in the mikveh. You can't put it in the depth of the mikveh. It's going to get lost. You have to put it on Milos Hamara, on the step of the mikveh where you can keep track of it. But the reason I told the story, this Mishnah, is because whenever I spoke to Rabbi Avrohom Michal, and since many of you, I read one of the daughters wrote a whole biography here, how he made everybody feel like their subject was his favorite subject. It's true. So everyone who spoke to him, I believe, will agree that he was the perfect needle. Because most people, when you have a lot of knowledge, or you have a lot of insight or memory, you become arrogant. You become forceful, the needle that can tear and damage, and not just spread two threads, but spread more than two threads. But Avrohom Michal was never arrogant, never pushed it. He looked like a very, very simple, average person. And yet he had a whole, the other side, the holy side, every pun intended, was so full, and yet there was never stechedikkeit, it was never hurtful. I never heard any kind of slight, not a lashon hara we're talking, even a remez. And there was a lot going around, not from Avrohom Michal. There was no time for that. There's no time to talk negativity. And I want to finally conclude. Someone mentioned he was very good in sports. I forget now who said that. Camp. Who was in camp in Swan Lake? Rabbi Zellickson. So he's mechavan to how I wanted to end. Taka wanted to end with this one more sikha. Very interesting. The Rebbe would say Kaddish different times of the year, not by the Amid, from his shtender. Not always did we know for who. It wasn't always clear. One of them, I think, is Isru Chag, Sukkos, if I'm not mistaken. Chavhei, it's Chavhei Tishrei Isru Chag, Chav Dalet. The Rebbe would say Kaddish. And the Rebbe said Kaddish one year. Nobody knew. Every year he said Kaddish on the day, but nobody knew why. For many, many years, 30, 40 years. One year, the Rebbe said the Kaddish, the Kadeshim rather, Kaddish Yasim, Kaddish Darabanan. And afterwards, asked for a microphone. They didn't always have a microphone. Later years, they kept the microphone always there, but not always they knew it was a sikha. And the Rebbe spoke a sikha. And the sikha was based on the first mission that we learned. Gimel Trissenheim. The Avelim will know. Shloisha Trissenheim. By 30 days, they already know those words by heart. Shloisha Trissenheim. By the end of the 11 months or 12 months, you'll know more than just 3 words. But Shloisha Trissenheim. There are 3 types of shields. Obviously, the first 2 are Tameh. Again, Svarim say it's not talking about a shield. It's talking about the neshama. The sun is our Avis, a neshama beguf, that testifies in front of his minion and in front of the whole shul and in front of the whole world and tells Hashem by his davening, my father's neshama is tahira. If you look in the first Perek, the Mishnayos that we learn, and many of the Mishnayos in the second Perek end with the word tahira. Why? Svarim say because the son has an opportunity through showing that he was in Schanach, he was educated by his father. he can proclaim as an edus, my father's neshama is tahira. If there's any kitruk, if there's any doubt, he's tahira. So the third to this is called shemesachkim bekunfen. The first two are used in war. One type you can sit on, one type you can lay on. The third one is not even used for death. It's simply a prop, like in the plays. Bekunfen, it's used just for play, for entertainment. When they were Magiyah the Sikha, my brother was involved with publishing the Sikhs. My brother had a very big question. Now's the first time we can maybe verify who the Rebbe says Kaddish for, but it's a very sensitive question. Now that there's a Sikha coming out, we can verify who it's for. A mystery that's been for decades unknown can be clarified now, because in honor of whoever it was that the Rebbe says Kaddish for, we can write that the Sikha is in her honor or his honor. So my brother wasn't sure what to do. I remember him going through this dilemma, but Lepel, he decided to have the chutzpah in a respectful way, not to get too personal, because if the Rebbe doesn't want to answer, maybe he doesn't want to answer. But the Rebbe said that to tell us Harab, and maybe we can write who the Sikha, who the Mishnah was learned for. Sure enough, the Rebbe wrote a very large answer, and the reason I'm telling it is because he mentions the Shneerson name, the Shneerson family. I don't know if it's the Rebbe's in Flint, but it's a Shneerson family. You'll soon hear the story. The Rebbe writes that I had a Baba. I think the Rebbe writes in Nikolaev. And when I was a child, in the summertime, we would go there for dacha. We went there for vacation, and she took care of me. Tippelbi, she took care of me. Sounds like the Rebbe was a toddler. And then she was killed in a pogrom by Hashem Yimkim Dama. Haprotim, the Rebbe writes, the details are not known to me. If you could verify, it's out of the Rebbe writes, out of covet and respect for her taking care of me, I say Kaddish. If you could find out more details, I would greatly appreciate it. And the Rebbe writes there, the Shneerson family. Again, I don't remember if he wrote Kvar Chabad or not, but the Rebbe did mention Shneerson, so that's why I decided to finish with the story and connect it to the sons, but now I see it's connected also to the father, Achzel Angiyar. Sport. The Rebbe wrote in the Sikh when he was Magiyah, besides to solve the clue, the question of who it was for, the Rebbe writes, B'sachken b'kunfen, you play with this third tris, shield, that never becomes, it's tahira, like the neshama. The Rebbe writes, people don't realize, hainu sport. The Rebbe wrote sport in English. This is sports. Mesachke bekunfen, thousands of years ago, is today, in modern days, called sports. We're all coming from supers, whatever they call it. So the Eibusha should help that the sport of Gullus, if you can call this a sport, it's rough sports, should end, and we should win. We should win the Super Bowl of Gullus, and only see each other. Have Simchas Mashiach now. Thank you very much.
Shkoyach Rabbi Jacobson. By the way, that sikh is from 1941. Tavshin Aleph, if you're interested. You said a story about a novel that the Rebbe taught you the word machad. One of my father-in-law's favorite saying was Pischuli kechudesh al machad lan eftach lachem kepischa shalulam. He went like this every single time. He must have said it, I don't know, 20, 30 times throughout Shabbosim when we were there. So it's interesting that you said that, because you said it doesn't split. It actually binds them together. So the next speaker will hopefully make it a little bit shorter. I mean, we all knew what we were in for when we called up Rabbi Jacobson. Even Rabbi Zarchi was like winking at me. He was like, 10 minutes, So the next speaker is as follows. When my in-laws got married, before they settled down in Crown Heights, Kansi V'Shemas HaBracha, they used to stay in with my father-in-law's mother, Marash Prince Aleho Hashalom. Of course, the chassid that my father-in-law was, there's no way that he's not going to come in for Shabbos when he's in Bensonhurst. So he came in for Shabbos, and the Achnasas Archis that was opened up to my father-in-law and my mother-in-law for Shabbos was by the Baumgarten family, which was right next to Baumgarten Shul, where my father-in-law served as a gabbai for many, many years. So, to the point, firstly, Mrs. Baumgarten is also from the Tzetzoim. So she was a karev to the family through my mother-in-law, to the point where she used to call my father-in-law her nephew. So we would like to call upon my father-in-law's cousin, Rabbi Levi Baumgarten, to please come and to say a few short words.
No, it's Chaim's fresh. No, it's fresh. More water? Chaim, I just want to start off praising the Malchus B'Bracha. Incidentally, mentioned before about the specialty of Shloshim. Rabbi Zelson here, he can correct me. When the Rebbe used to go to the oil, the Rebbe did not wear a gartel. He wore a gartel at Rosh Hashanah. But the Shloshim of the Rebbe that we just passed, Chok Beis Shvat, the Shloshim of the Rebbe did wear a gartel. Just want to mention that interesting thing. Also tonight, if I stand correct, I believe it's the yahrzeit of Rabbi Flint's father. Am I correct? Yes. So I have to mention tonight the yahrzeit of his father. And Chavav. Kalman, thank you. So we should do this. We should see him now with his galas. Very quickly. Trust me, quickly. We'll talk very quick, a few minutes. Just want to mention I'm here, not myself, my brothers, but Rabbi Flint. We had a very special relationship with my father and mother, and of course with the shul, my father's shul. As you know, the Baumgarten shul. He was the gabbai there for many years, and he was just, as you all know, I spoke about before. The one thing you want to know when it came to Fabrengen, and you want to know a chassid, he remembered who a chassid is. You want to know anything, he knew everything. Just want to mention, he had a tremendous, close relationship with my uncle, Rabbi Grona, very close relationship. As you all know, when Rabbi Grona used to Fabrengen many places, generally he was the only one who used to speak. When Rabbi Flint was there by the Fabrengen, he always asked him to say a few words, but you know what that means itself, who he was. And I want to conclude pretty fast. I want to conclude with something you don't know, most of you don't know, that I have the schus, and I try to do the best I can. And I have the schus to be a shliach, try to be a shliach, I should say, of the Rebbe, one of my shlichus in Mitzvah Tank, beside the Hamptons. And Monday we go downtown to Broadway Liberty. And for 5, 6, or maybe 7 years, we daven mincha at 1:40. And every Monday, Rabbi Flint would come to the mitzvah tank, come with a little bag, with a little lunch, whatever was in there. And he would come and he would sit, not to mincha, but he would come an hour before. And we would sit and people would ask questions. And he loved it, and we loved him, and everybody loved him. And not only that, we used to prepare questions for the next week, what we had, because he knew everything. There's nothing he didn't know. So everyone prepared. And then it's interesting, unfortunately, when he took sick, he stopped coming. And many of the Balabatim who came to the tank said, "Where's Rabbi Flint?" So it became a weekly thing. How's he doing? Please send him regards. We miss him. We miss him. But I just want to correct Rabbi Jacobson when he said before something that I didn't like. He said that by the end of the 12 months, the boys will know the Mishnayos. It's not going to be on 12 months. We're going to have this Galus right away, so they won't know the Mishnayos, and hopefully it'll happen tonight. Now,
what's wrong with Mashiach coming and knowing the Mishnayos? There's nothing wrong with that. By the way, I witnessed that once, by the way. I was in your father's shul, and Rabbi was there, and he said to me, Rabbi Flint, so I saw it with my own eyes. Talking about Rabbi Baumgarten's shul, there's a young individual who is here and gives over a shir in Likkutei Sichos, I believe, or is it B'chlal in Young in Chassidus, that is sponsored by the family, especially by my mother-in-law, every Wednesday night at 8:30. Is that the time? 8:30 p.m. in Baumgarten's shul. Those of you who don't know, it's the one with the icy steps and the beautiful awning. 8:30 every single Wednesday night. I attended this week. I'm usually not here on Wednesday night because I'm upstate, but this week I was here and it was a grand pleasure. Without further ado, I would like to call upon Rabbi Mati Lipscore to please come up and say a couple of words in honor of my father-in-law. He had a deep connection with the family and with my father-in-law. He's also extremely involved in the shul itself.
My assumption is that whoever's here until now probably doesn't mind staying for another 45 minutes. So sit back and relax. So the shir actually began quite a few years ago in Kal Chassidim. Every Friday night I would give a short drasha. So one week it was Parshas Shlach. And I asked a question. The question was, it says, Kalev went to daven in Hebron. He was the only one. Out of 12 Meragalim, he's the only one who went. Yeshua didn't go because Moshe Rabbeinu already davened, gave him a bracha. The question was, what about the other 10? Why didn't they go? And imagine you hear your whole life about the Rabbeim in Russia, and one summer you're sent on a shluchus to summer camp in Russia. And one of your friends says, I'm going to all the kvarim. And you don't go. How does that make sense? So I waited a couple of seconds to see if it absorbed the question. So Rabbi Flint, he always sat right across from me, saying his inimitable tone of voice, right? Very quiet but confident. He said 4 words. He says, "They haben sich geschämt." They were ashamed to go. They knew that they're up to something. They felt it was right, even though they knew in their hearts of hearts that this is not what Moshe Rabbeinu wants. And they were embarrassed to show themselves to the others. Who could think of such an answer? It's a gewaltige gedank. Only someone who lives his life in such a way. You could say Rabbi Avrohom he was an honest person. A few of you mentioned already. He was honest almost to a fault. He knew his own milas, and he was happy to share them. He knew his own yichus. He was happy to share that. He knew his own chesronos. He was happy to talk about those. And he also he was happy to talk about others as well. He would tell me my own yichus. He would remind me birthdays of my family and yard sites. But the Babi Taibel, he knew everything. He was also able to tell you what you still have to work on. So an honest person. If we could take a lesson, it's something that a chassid strives for. It means not to fool ourselves. One of the ways we could live up to that by not fooling ourselves is also asay l'charav, because a lot of times we could, our self-love could blind us. I know when Mrs. Flint called to do this shir, the new shir, she mentioned that they had called Rabbi Avrahom's mashpia. Now I know this from years before. He had a mashpia and a rav, and he would talk to them pretty often, and he asked them shaylas. I know because he would ask me something, come back and say my rav said otherwise, but he would always ask shaylas, and he would follow through with what they said, which is something that we could all learn from. To have one, if we have one, maybe talk to them more often, or maybe check if they're attacking the right one for us, or perhaps maybe even to become one to someone who needs. Pirkei Avos says asay l'cha rav, which simply means make for yourself a rav. Medrash Shmuel teaches asay l'cha rav. make yourself into a Rav. If there's somebody who's asking you to help them, to be their Rav, and you're going to start playing Falsha Nivus, you have to build yourself up and say, no, I could be their Rav, I could help them, I got to do it. You mentioned Rabbi Groner. One of the last conversations I had with him, I mentioned this on the Shirva Wednesday night, it was right on the steps of, the icy steps of Kal Chassidim. Happens to be it was the summer, but they were still icy. So he asked me about a certain younger man, if I could talk to him about something. I said, I do talk to him, but this I can't say to him. So he said, tell me, who's his Rav? Who's his Mashpia? This younger man. I said, he doesn't have one. And Rabbi, he couldn't, he was beside himself, Rabbi Groner. He was holding his house in Flint. I leaned back on the wall over there. He says, how could it be a younger man doesn't have a Seiluch Rav? He said, Mati, you have to do whatever you can that everyone in Crown Heights, every younger man has to have a Seiluch Rav. So another Achayit Taliba, if we could do that, should live up to his example, would be a Gewaltige Zach. And finally, it's Ashkocha Pratis that his Shloshim comes out in Ve'elam Mishpatim. Rashi says, Asher Tosim Lifnei Hem. If we ever have a question in life, it's not just Torah. Any question in life, we look for direction in Torah. Now, even if we could find identical information in a not Torah source, and it's going to be the exact same thing, we go to the Torah. There's a story Rabbi Zelickson shared with me once that there was a Bacher complained to the Rebbe that he's having Sveikas in Emunah. And the Rebbe asked him if he adjusted his watch to the clock on the cloister. I'm assuming it was the cloister of the church on Brooklyn and Union. And I'm assuming, I don't remember if that's the Rebbe asked me if he, and it turns out that the Bacher did. And the Rebbe said that's, I guess, I don't know if he gave him a ticket or not. Point is, if you could think of if there's anything as unobjective as objective as time. Took the time, everyone agrees on time. We took it from a cloister. Time has to be taken from a holy place, from a good place. So I was just reading the paper that one of the daughters wrote, and I see over there also, she writes that she graduated. You know, the pride and joy, she finally graduated. And this is also typical of Rabbi Flint. So he tells her, this is not the most important thing. It's math and it's chagah, it's not the most important thing. And as his daughter, she was able to appreciate that. Because to him, Torah was the most important thing. He was a knowledgeable person, whether it was history, whether it was politics, economics, of course, Chassidus, he knew it all. But his passion was for the emes, and that you're only going to find in the Torah. And he also he took a lot of pride in the fact that he used to ask his Einaklach all the time what they're learning. His Einaklach should know that they made him proud, even if he didn't always tell it to you. He was tough on you guys, but after you guys would leave, he would say, "It's my Einaklach." So he was very proud of you, and he continued to make him proud because you guys. I don't know anyone was blessed with the kind of memory he was blessed with. Maybe got scattered between all of you. It's still not bad. But you should continue to make him proud. And just end off with one thing for the Mrs. Flint. At the end, the Hara Chaim on this week's parsha says on the beginning where it talks about what's Yotza Chinam Ein Kosef. Says that one of the pshatim, a beautiful pshat. And he said, it's talking about the Eibusher. The Eibusher will sell his daughter, which is us. He sells us into slavery, into Golos. And he ends off over there by saying, what's about if the Eibusher doesn't provide us with She'er Ksus and Oina? The Yidden are suffering in Golos. If that's going to be the situation, then B'yatza Chinam, he has to let us free. He has to bring Mashiach in Kosef. Even if we don't have a Kosef, even if we don't have the longing for Mashiach, we lost the strength even to have a longing for Mashiach, the Eibusher has to send the Mashiach anyway. Kol Shegan, you have a Mrs. Flint, and the family follows her example. That one thing is for sure is a kaisef from Mashiach. Talking about the l'chaims every Friday. If she could, she chaps me. She knows I need a l'chaim and a Russian pamphlet for someone on the Utica Avenue. So the Eibusher should give her the strength, together with the whole family, to keep strong. And the Mitzvah Shem keeps an anu sheikh and the offer immediately.
Shkayach Rabbi Mati Lipscore. Yes, some of the grandchildren did inherit his memory and his brains. As a matter of fact, we're going to call on one very, very shortly to come and say a couple of words. Before we call up the next speaker, I just want to mention that we're going to call up Hatamim Menachem Mendel Flint, who's his last name namesake. It's his best of both worlds, his last name and the Rebbe's first name. He's He's going to come up and say a few short words. Before we call him up, I'd like to call up a dear friend of the family. He is not a friend of the family. He is family. He's family. My brother-in-law's brother. He once told my wife, he says, I don't understand why you guys don't sit with the tape recorder 24/7. So we're calling upon Rabbi Yossi Kamen. He is the chief editor of the Chassidish Head that I am a very big fan of. This coming one, I have a shtickle akdasha. My credit card statement says so, but thank you for the akdasha. And he said to my wife, he says, I don't understand why you guys don't sit with 24/7 with a tape recorder. I have the future of the entire Chassidish Head right here. Those are his words. Without further ado, I'd like to call up a friend, a family member, Rabbi Yossi Kamen.
Not sure if I should say that I'm going to be mekatzer. Apparently, it's easier said than done. But I will try. I'll try my best. So I was asked to speak. They have many illustrious, great speakers that spoke before me. I was asked to speak as someone who spent a lot of time with Rabbi Flint and heard many stories from him. I'll tell you the truth. Over the last 20 years that our families are connected, I didn't always realize and appreciate the person sitting in front of me until I got a little bit older. I remember going to yeshiva. I was in yeshiva in Detroit, and I met up with Rabbi Moshe Zaklikovsky, who unfortunately passed away this year as well. He was a classmate of Rabbi Flint back in Bedford and Dean. So once in conversation, Rabbi Flint came up and he said, Avrohom Flint, you should know that the Rebbe made Rabbi Flint. Can't remember if he said saved or made. But one of the two. So I realized when I go back to New York the next time I'm sitting with him, I should figure out what's going on. Now today, Baruch Hashem, everything is recorded on the Gem interview that he did, and I'm sure they gave it out, a pamphlet, and there's much more on video, so it's recorded for posterity. So, there's many, Rabbi Zarchi mentioned before that there's many people in Bedford and Dean, and probably a very small part of the people that went for Bedford and Dean ended up staying in Lubavitch. But there are those few that did, or those, whatever the statistics are. What was special about Rabbi Flint is not just that he ended up staying in Lubavitch. We know that the Rebbe Rashab chose the neshamas that will learn in Temchet Tanimim, and it applies to future generations as well. But it's a spiritual thing, that our neshamas were chosen. But Rabbi Flint, it was not only, obviously it's the neshama, but it wasn't only in the spiritual sense, it's in a very physical sense. Rabbi Flint was chosen by the Rebbe. He literally was not planning. He finished yeshiva high school in Bedford and Dean. He was not planning on continuing. He did not consider himself a Lubavitcher. And the Rebbe literally told him, I think you should go to Montreal for the summer and then for yeshiva. And when he came back from Montreal years later, he was already a Lubavitcher. Literally chosen. So I just want to say a story that I heard from Rabbi Flint, since that's what I was asked to do. So I'll say my favorite story that I heard from him, from the Rebbe. And this is about it happened before the wedding of his sister, Sister Esther. So as we know, Rabbi Flint's mother was a Holocaust survivor, and his father passed away. Today was the yard site. His father passed away very young. And they had children before the war, and they had 2 children after the war, Rabbi Flint and his sister. And the only sister is having a wedding. She's getting married. And Rabbi Flint already, I guess, came back from Montreal, he ready, and the Rebbe pushed him there, and he was ready, full-fledged. And like someone mentioned before, Chas v'Shalom now is not going to miss the Rebbe's Fabrengen. And he informed his mother, the Holocaust survivor, the Almana, who only has two children. He said, I'm not coming to Bensonhurst for the Ufruf. I'm not missing a Fabrengen. So his mother went to Yechidus, I think before the wedding, and she went, it was before the wedding, but I'm assuming it's in connection with the wedding, if I remember correctly. And Rabbi Flint told me that she came out of the Yechidus smiling from ear to ear. So he asked his mother, why are you so excited? Says the Rebbe told me, I told him that you're not coming to the Ufruf, and the Rebbe told me, don't worry, I'm going to take care of everything. Smiling from ear to ear. Okay, his mother said that the Rebbe said, that's what's going to happen, but he doesn't know what's going to happen. So in those years, you were able to, later on it stopped, and it had a different form, but in those years, you were able to give a bottle of mashka to the Rebbe for any occasion. It's your birthday, it's a bar mitzvah, it's anything, you can go up to the Rebbe, give a bottle of mashka, but pour, give it back. So he decided he's going to go to the Rebbe and give a bottle of mashka for his sister's wedding. Usually you do it the week before, but he has this problem. His mother claims that the Rebbe says that he's not going to be here next Shabbos. He's going to the Ofra, but he hasn't heard anything. He doesn't know. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? But you know what he says? I'm not going to take my chances. I'm not going to wait for the week before the wedding. I'm going to go 2 weeks before. Baruch Hashem, if I bring in 2 weeks in a row that time, I don't know what year it was. So he went up to the Rebbe, and he told the Rebbe that my Schwester hat Chasen at Divach. My sister's getting married this week. And the Rebbe looked at him and said, Divach or the next Divach? This week or next week? And Rabbi Flint, he didn't really explain exactly, but sort of the Rebbe knew, I know your number. And sure enough, the next day, Rabbi Klein called him over and told him to go to Rabbi Chadakov. Rabbi Chadakov said at the Rebbe at Gehasen, you should go to the wedding, to the Ufruf, and you should look at it as a shlichus, you should chazach chassidus. That's the story. So what I'm trying to say is that the Rebbe not only took him and chose him and said, I want you. I know you went to Bedford and Dean and you learned in our meisters. And, at our wedding, he met up with at my wedding, he met up with one of the Balabatim in Long Island. He was his classmate. And back in Bedford and Dean, he could have been, if the Rebbe would not have chosen him, he could have been one of the Balabatim in Long Island or whatever. But the Rebbe not only chose him, but the Rebbe only had a specific, the Rebbe made sure that he is someone that the Rebbe says, I know you, and I'm watching out for you. But the question is, what do you do with this? Because there are many, but we know all the stories, and we know he's not the only person that had such a thing, but the question is what you do with it. Many people had such showering of attention from the Rebbe, and not necessarily did they use those tools that the Rebbe gave them properly. Rabbi Flint was someone who used it properly, and the way he became involved with the Chazara and Kal Chasidim, like was mentioned, and with the simultaneous translation in English of the Fabringans. I once heard from Rabbi Flint, he was talking to me, it reflects upon Rabbi Flint. He says, when it was announced that the Rebbe is going to Fabring on Shabbos afternoon, whenever it was announced, whenever the people knew about it, he says, there was a simcha in Shtad. Everyone in Crown Heights was so excited. He said, you think everyone understood? Think everyone understood what the Rebbe said? No. The neshama heard, but there was an excitement. And obviously, he's saying this as a reflection on his own excitement, because you see everything with your glasses. And the Rebbe Fabring, it was just an excitement, and he's someone that did understand the Fabringen. So there's many qualities, and many people spoke before me about the different qualities of Rabbi Flint, and how it was all done, all of this, the Beir Sujah in the Ma'abit Tippa that is written on the Matseva, and all of this was done not in a haughty, some people are loud, but running on empty. Rabbi Flint, he's unassuming, but as soon as, and even when he's saying, even when he's correcting you, even when there's something that is, he's making what he knows apparent, it's all done in a very hatznileches and unassuming way. And this is also the nemanus. This type of personality of Rabbi Flint is the nemanus and the emeskite of Rabbi Flint, the trustworthiness that you can have in him. I remember that, again, when we got married, so my father's spoke to Chaim Baruch Halberstam to arrange he wanted the Rebbe's kapata and the shirt. So he called Chaim Baruch, and Chaim Baruch says, okay, I don't know, whatever, but who am I going to give it to? Give it to me? No, I'm not giving it to you. I have to give it to someone I trust. Who do you trust? This guy, that guy. I don't know, give me a name of every single person that's going to the wedding, and I'll choose who I trust, if I trust someone. So my father sent him the Rishim, sent him the list who's going to the wedding, and there was Gedalim, V'Tevim, very beautiful people that were at the wedding, Baruch Hashem, and that the entire list from both sides of the wedding, there's one person that he chose that's trustworthy to bring the Sutuk, the Rebbe's Sutuk and the Rebbe's shirt, that is Rabbi Flint. That's what happened. The problem is, how are you going to get it there on time? So for that, there was the Eitzah. I forgot, I think it's your idea. Be mechaber Rabbi Flint with the bracha, and I'll make sure to be there. I just want to finish off that, it's written on the Beis Sud She'eina Ma'abed Tippa, that he was someone that retained everything, literally everything. He wasn't just about Shmua. Most people, they have a certain thing that it's their Zahir Tfei, something that they're special at. They know a lot of stories, they know how to learn. You know everything. You know how to learn, you know how to study. And I think this Beis Sud She'eina Ma'abed Tippa actually comes from Bedford and Dean. I think this was inscribed in the journal. Whatever year it was, they had a journal with a picture of every person with a certain quote from Chazal under each person to describe the personality, and under him they wrote Beis Sud She'eina Ma'abed Tippa. That's where this all comes from. It's written on his Matzeva. So I don't know if I'm not sure if this is true or where it comes from, but I read, and someone couldn't tell me if this has a marker, I read that this was said about the Rebbe Marash, that he was a Beis Sud She'eina Ma'abed Tippa. Out of all the Rabbeim, he was the Rebbe that had this quality of retaining everything. So what is the Rebbe Marash? The Rebbe Marash is obviously L'chatchila Ariber. And L'chatchila Ariber is something that is part and parcel of the Flint family. They're over the top. They're not getting bogged down by the obstacles. During the illness of Rabbi Flint, so in a better time, during that period, I once asked him, how are you doing? He said, how am I doing? The doctor said I shouldn't be around and I have X amount of time to live. And now it's not only months later, but years later, and here I am. I'm not saying it was all peaches and cream, but it was definitely L'chatchila Ariber, something anyone that knows anything about Mrs. Flint for sure. This L'chatchila Ariber, this Beis Sud She'eina Ma'abed Tippa, this is something, and the living shall take it to heart. We're coming from the Chapei Shvat, which is when Lubavitch became very familiar with this word, because not only did the Rebbe say it about the Rebbetzin, the Rebbe said about everything. The Rebbe started replacing Hamaisa Hua Ikr v'Chayitin Alibe. The living shall take it to heart. Is this L'chatchila Ariber? This over the top, not getting bogged down by the obstacles, something that is the legacy of the Flint family, which comes from the patriarch, from Rabbi Flint, is something that we should all take it to heart, until we should be zeicher to the ultimate L'chatchila Ariber, and like was always on the lips of Rabbi Flint, and I understand it was the last words on his lip, should be Mashiach now.
Shkayach Yasi. I'm sorry that Rebbe messed up your plans. My father-in-law could have been one of the Balabatim in Long Island paying for the dead. Now you're going to have to write about him into the dead. So, all right. We have one last speaker, but before I call him up, we're going to call up Hatamim Menachem Mendel Flint, an Einikel from Hara Flint, to come up and please say a couple words.
I had the privilege to be my Sava's Chavrosa, and we would learn Gemara, and Sava would help me write down my Chavros. He would help me with translations for all sorts of things. There was a story that my Sava told me when I was learning Hamafkin and Yagdal Torah, and then he related to me again this year in my Aunt Malki's house, where he stayed during his final few months. When he was a boy and learning Hamafkin in school, one day he went into Yechidus with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe asked him what he was learning. He said he was learning Hamafkin, and the Rebbe asked him a few questions. And then the Rebbe asked him, when the Pekadin is stolen, the Shemer is Pater. The question is, why is he Pater? If he only did a Shemer Pechusar, can't stay in the ganze Nacht mit der Revolver and gehitten. He was able to stay the entire night with the revolver and watched it. My Saba told me that he didn't know the answer, so the Rebbe told him. Since the time of that Yechidus, Saba came to love learning Gemara, so much so that that is what he loved to learn with me. I'm so appreciative to have the privilege to learn with Saba on many occasions, and I've had his help in my own learning. For the For the Shloshim, I learned Kiddushin and Shavuos. Kiddushin is talking about the first part of the marriage, and Shavuos is talking about the Shavuos that you need to make in core. For Kiddushin is different these days from the olden days. In the olden days, when you did the Kiddushin was far away from the Nisuin. The Kiddushin was the engagement. When the engage when these days it's different. These days the Kiddushin and the Nisuin are both under the chuppah. And I'm gonna end the last few lines of the last Mishnah. Rabbi Neiraya says, I set aside all the businesses in the world. And I teach my son only Torah. As a person takes the reward in this world, and the reward remains for him also in Olam Haba. But the other professions, it's not like this. Because if a person becomes sick, or he becomes old, or he undergoes suffering, he's not able to be involved in his business. He dies in hunger because he doesn't have money for it. But the Torah is not so. Rather, guard him from all sins and evil when he's a kid, when his son is and provide him with future hope in his old age. The Mishnah explains, with regard to his youth, what does the Torah say? But they that wait for Hashem shall renew their strength. With regard to his old age, what does it say? They shall still bring forth fruit in old age. It likewise says regarding Avrohom Avinu. Vavram zakim ba bayam Vavram zakim Hashem berach Avram bakol. And Avram was old, and Hashem blessed Avram with everything. Matzinu she'asa Avram Avinu es kol haTorah kol ad shalei nishna. We found that Avram Avinu fulfilled the entire Torah before it was given. Shenamar, like it says in the pasuk, Eikav asher shama Avram b'koli v'yishmer mishmarti mitzvosei chukosei v'tereisei. It says that Avram listened to my voice, kept my charge, my commandments, my status, and my laws.
Thank you, Menachem Mendel, for such warm and beautiful words. And wow, what a learning. We're going to call up the last speaker, just letting you know that after the last speaker, there's going to be a continuing of the siyum that Menachem Mendel started. Baruch Hashem, I think Mishnayos was finished, twice, right? Entirely. And we would like to thank every single one of you that took on Mishnayos, regardless if it's large or small, to finish the Mishnayos twice. And I also want to thank everyone who took on a tremendous amount of Tehillim throughout the time that my father-in-law wasn't well. There are people here in the room. I'm looking at Tzvi Russell. I know that he finished personally. He said he finished 14 times, the Tehillim 14 times. So a tremendous amount of Tehillim was said in honor of my father-in-law. You are muted.
You're
Take off
muted.
mute. Take off mute.
They can't hear you.
Start all over. That'll be painful.
You know, actually, I found out some time ago that he was born in a DP lager in 48, I think it was. And I also was born in a DP lager, not in 48, a year before then, in Austria. He was born in Germany, I think. So we share that to a degree. In any event, but we went to Veteran Dean together. Spent 10 years together there. Then he went to Montreal. I was in Montreal only for 1 year. He was there for a number of years. I went to Morristown. That time wasn't Morristown, it was Newark. Went to 770. He took a different path. And we maintained a relationship. Not especially intense, but a relationship. But then when things became not well, and I wanted to be able to give him a boost, if that's the right word. So we decided to become a chavrusa, and we had an interesting situation. What we did is, I used to call him in the morning. Rabbi Avrohom said, "How do you feel today?" He says, "Want to learn something?" He says, "Yeah, we're going to learn." So where do we learn? We're not going to learn the house. We need to a mokem yuchad. We'll learn across the street. We're going to go to Rei Mohuvim or Kal Chasidim and spend some time there. Okay. So we go across the street. Now, the first Seder Yom was that he had to go to the mikveh. There's a mikveh in Reimahuvim. He had access to that mikveh. But him became Cheknosim V'Loyaber before learning, for davening. I mean, that was something that was not to be countenanced. So he went to the mikveh. Afterwards, we learned the Gemara, and I noticed something that I have never seen before. When we came to a Mishnah, he gave a scream. He says, "Zok der Heilige Mishnah." It became like he's getting involved, getting passionate. The Mishnah, the Heilige Mishnah Zok. And it wasn't he said it once. Every Mishnah, that was Akdama to the Mishnah, the Heilige Mishnah Zok. I mean, I never had yeshiva. My yeshiva learned with us Mishnayos and Gemara, but so I say it out loud. Zok der Heilige Mishnah. It's something that you don't see often. Then when he used to go to the hospital very, very many times on the west side, upper west side, he used to take a Gemara with him. And same thing as when he went to the country, he used to take a Gemara with him. And in the car, we used to have telephone conversations. I used to say he wanted to speak. He didn't want to give up his learning. So again, it's something that you go on a trip to upstate New York, you sit in a car, and sitting in the car in the back, or wherever it was in front, with a Gemara, and learning with the Chavrusa back in Brooklyn. I said to myself, this is a person was left with them, not stam learning the Gemara. Whenever he could find an opportunity, sitting in the car doing nothing, doesn't make sense. Learned it. Now, when he used to have Verbrengens, either at Baumgarten Shul or other Verbrengens, he used to repeat them to me when I was sitting learning with him. And by him, a verse from a chassid, especially a chassid from Rav Greenglass, used to tell stories in Montreal, or chassid from Rav Ramayar, or chassid from Rav Rebel Groner. He used to say a word from them. By him, it was Kaddish. It was holy. It was heard. When you speak about the Rebbe and Hagge from the Rebbe, it wasn't just Kaddish. It was Kaddish Kedoshim. That's the way he looked at things. It's remarkable his look on it. Now, but it was said before a few times that when he told the story, or he used exact language 35, 40 years later, and I saw it, I heard stories from him many, many years ago, and many years later, I heard ois ba'ois, what he said. I mean, it's not that he had a phenomenal memory, and he remembered word after word. Now, he had something else which many people here don't have, Anisha Shkulai. So what it means, he used to know the Rebbe's dynasties. Chernobyl and Rishon and Vizhnitz and Satmar. He knew them and their names. Where do you pick it up? I don't know. But you can ask Babsha Chassid if he knew about the Rebbe. He knew more about them that they themselves didn't know. It's remarkable. He had this talent of picking up things and sticking to him. Now, he cherished very much in our conversations. He cherished very much the fact that he was, through you married through a Schneerson, that he was a member of the Tzatzoim, connected to the altar. But him, it was something they cherished very, very deeply. And soft-spoken that he was, and he never felt higher than anyone else. He was in Kabul, everyone is something that's remarkable. And if you didn't know that he was the person that he was, you'd think he's a plain person walking down the street saying hello, giving a smile. After learning in the morning there, what do? This is the morning Seder. Then we decided that he was to go to 770 to daven. So we used to go back to the house. We used to either pick up your dinner or not pick up your dinner sometimes. We used to go to 770 and he used to spend 2 or 3 hours or whatever it was in 770 davening. This was his schedule. Then we decided that sometimes he wanted to change location. He wanted to go to Yagdil Torah. Yagdil Torah on Eastern Parkway became by him his office. Whenever he called me, I'm at the office. What office? He's in Yagdil Torah. That's his office. Okay. So I know that he was in Yagdil Torah. Okay. So he used to come down to Yagdil Torah, and we used to spend time. It was easier for me also. You didn't have to shut up the car. I used to walk over. Okay. We're sitting and learning. And I was privy, because I was there with him so much in Yagel Torah, everyone knew who he was. He was a known presence. He used to come there, come out, and everyone knew he had his bench. Everyone knew he talked to everyone. He was freilich with everyone. He talked to everyone. He was a man that everyone congregated around and talked to. One day, I was a part of a developing story, and I mentioned before to the children, and it really boggles my mind. You know, Avrohom had told me that he was looking for shidduch for his daughter, Shprinze. Looking for shidduch. He loved all his children, especially his daughters, but he loved them in such a way that he felt that Shprinze was a special Hasidic girl and deserved a special Hasidic bacher. Now, I don't have to tell you that the shidduch scene here in Crown Heights, that especially for a girl, no matter how great she is, to get a shidduch that would meet Avrohom's qualifications, to get a shidduch, and not only would come out, it'll cost a lot of money also, but even if he had the money to do it, he couldn't get it. So the Eibsher saw his predicament. And created a novel solution. What's a novel solution? He had a grandson, Shimon. Kobe's son, Shimon Lang. Shimon was learning in Chayvei Teva, learning smichas by someone there. And while he was talking to everyone, became friendly with him, who he was, and then he said, you know what? Maybe you should write I have an aunt. It might be an idea for you to text to my grandfather something about going out with my aunt. I don't know why the person took him up on it, but this Rabbi Ephraim, who was a bacher in the yeshiva, became someone that in the horoscope, in the telescope. All of a sudden, I'm sitting there in the Kail, in the office. I'm sorry, sitting in the office, and he gets a text. From this person who never knows, who doesn't know about him. I don't think even Shimon told him about it before the text. Who is he? Who does it? Ephraim Bolter? Who knows about him? What's going on? It becomes such a mystery. And finally, we go through all the loops, and Baruch Hashem, it worked out. This Ephraim Bolter became a chassan and kala to Shprinze. Okay. But then we're talking about the wedding. Now the wedding is sometime down the road. I think I'm not sure when the Tanaim was it Shvat? Shvat. You couldn't make it before Pesach. You have to make, and I said with the 7 weeks. Lag Baimer. The wedding is Lag Baimer. Lag Baimer, and he was getting weaker. Wasn't well, and he didn't know. But Lag Baimer, you have to hope and pray that David will give you the kaiches to make it to the chasna. He told me more than once. He said to me, he hopes that Hashem will grant him the strength to interfere his daughter at the wedding. Baruch Hashem, his bakasha was answered, and not only was he at the wedding Lag Baimer in the courtyard of the Rebbe, but he was in Sadr Kedushin also there. And we all were there with him, and we had tears of joy for him and Yedid and the rest of the family. Baruch Hashem, one of his pet requests had been granted. Now, during all the time that I was with him, he never complained about the intense suffering he was going through. You could see it, you could see on his face, you could see the pain, the ravaging of the pain. But complain, never. And I saw that he was getting weaker and weaker. So one evening, when he came over to the Lang residence, now I forgot to mention that when he used to go to the hospital on the west side, most of the time the driver was Kobe. And Kobe had this mission that when he took him to the hospital, he used to put on film whenever he could, any person that walked in their hospital that was game to put on film. In fact, I think Rabbi Avrohom had tremendous nachas that he says, oh, he's meeting his quota. He's getting more tefillin, and he was an expert. I couldn't understand how every guy he talks to smiles, puts on film. It was like good, okay. So the last few months he was by Kobe in his house on the first floor on Eastern Parkway, and I came over one evening. He was given a room there. I sat next to him, but I'm next to the bed. I started telling him how his wife and all his children they're so caring, and they do everything they can for him. The Fnimishur Sadin, so that their Abba, as they called him, is comfortable as much as possible. He said he knows. He knows. He appreciates. He knows. Then I told him something which I didn't have a chutzpah till then, but I felt, knowing his massive, I told him that I'd heard the name of Reb Zalman Shimon, that one should say vidui, not mamash the day before. No one knows every. When he goes to the hospice, person goes to the hospice, you should say vidui right then. You start saying vidui, not wait. So I said to him, do you mind, Rabbi Avrohom, that we should say it together? We should say vidui together. He said yes. Of course, yes. And I started saying, and he followed word after word. We asked Hashem that he should give him a refuah shlema, and if it'll pass, everything should pass away. And if not, chas v'shalom, setehei misasi kapara, that the misa should wipe away all the sins and transgressions that he had committed, I committed, we said it together. The same Lashon there is the same chelki began Eden, the zakeni lo'olam haba hatzofin l'tzadikum. And I stopped in the middle. I couldn't go further. It was very emotional, and I didn't know if he can continue going. And then he looked at me. He nodded his head. He said, a special smile of his, okay, go. He encouraged me to finish. And then afterwards he said his complimentary words, Mashiach now. That was like a statement that he always said at every important thing. And a short time later, he had a stroke and was unable to talk anymore. So he said, obviously, we heard so much good things about him that it's hard to describe him more than was described today. Maybe if to write about him, or Rabbi can write maybe from the things that he has from the videos. But the children should know, the wife should know, the daughter should know that he was a special neshama. He was a mishkusher to the Rebbe in every fiber of his being. And he was a chassid in every interpretation of the word chassid. And he tried as much as he can to do what was asked of him. And we should do those things that we feel that'll give him nachas. And the children and grandchildren certainly have the capacity to be able to do all those things. He's Ifrei Baruch. We should have him take it from Yad Mamish, the Galus Rebbe Mashiach.
Thank you, Rabbi Light. There's going to be a 3-minute video for those of you who want to stay and watch it. It is not a long video. Rabbi Jacobson did not put it together. 3-minute video, and it's going to take place right after the Siyum. We're going to have the Siyum Mishnayos by Abachar Atamim Chesky Raskin, who took on a tremendous amount of Mishnayos in order to fulfill the second one entirely, together with Menachem Mendel Halevi Flint, who already finished, right? You already started the Siyum Mishnayos. So he did the Siyum. Before we start the Siyum, Reb Shmuel, I want to just tell you that he was Malav Gadish in Polish and Galician Chassidus. We were once at a wedding together. So this guy's telling him a story. I get a chassid about this. The Get It Rebbe said this. Get It Rebbe said this. It's a schus, a ma'aseh with getting a sandikos. And he said he meant that the Get It chassid mentioned the wrong Rebbe. So afterwards he walked over to him and he said them 2 words. He says to him, Beis Yisrael. He mentioned the wrong Get It Rebbe. He said, Beis Yisrael. The guy looks at him. He's like, because he understood. So, Habacher Atamim Cheskir Askin. Ayeko. 2.
Thank you, Davi. You can't compete with Mendel. Your siyum was beautiful, but we'll try our best. And so we're going to learn the last Mishnah of the entire Mishnayos. We're going to try to explain it. We're going to say the Hadron on it, the Hadron Alach, and then Menachem and Yaakov are going to say Kaddish D'Rabbanan. Okay? Omer Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, also the Kadosh Baruch Hu Lahancha L'Chol Tzadik V'Tzadik Shlosh Meis V'Asara Ilamis. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says that Hashem will Mirza Hashem give every single tzaddik 310 spiritual worlds as their reward. Shenemar Lahancha Lo'ei V'Yesh V'Tersei Mamali. Like the pasuk says that he's going to inherit to every single people, every single tzaddik that loves him. Yesh. Yesh is Yud Shin. It's Gamashia 310. That's how much spiritual worlds they're going to get as their reward. Amri B'Shimon Mechalafta Le'Matar Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kli Matzah Brach L'Yisrael Ella Hashalim. Rabbi Shimon Mechalafta says that Hashem was looking for a keli for the brachas to come down to the Yidden in the world, and the only thing he found that was able to hold it was peace. When people have peace with each other. Shenemar Hashem Oiz B'Am Yidden Hashem Baruch Hashem Hashalim. And it's the Hadron. It takes about a minute or two, and then we're going to have the Kaddish. Hadron Lachshita Shid Mishnah Hadron Lachshita Lachshita Shid Mishnah Datachlan. The Nishtim Lachshita Shid Mishnah Shid Mishnah Legavi and Demon Dasi. Hadron Reino Shid Mishnah Hadron Fino Am Israel Bini Plan on Africa Zeno to say Am Israel. Lo Yedish Mechal Lend Shas Kosmel Yebit Kosmel to Zam Lel Yivi. Ili Bisam Gachaman Yevish Kulel and Shid Ashka Pidachman Kisene Bar Hadron Din of Kaha Amin and Salavoy. Wait a minute Allah. Menachal Hadron the University of Sam to Fakino Mishi Bisanet Bisanet Mishi Crunch. So you shall know Maskim and Himaskim. On Maskim the Debate of him, Maskim the Drum Taylor. On Mamel, Mamel, become suffer, him become suffer, you know. On the Reds, Ratsman, Ratsum Hayam about, him Ratsum the Vershakas, never about him to redeem the Versakas, and she done Mirma, that's the Yamaniaka, but he doesn't matter when I live, they change the tiny the sign. She's a visit, she's a mission of Catholic in the hospital, so they're in front. Achino, Hassan, a little alarm, and some glasses time, because I'm to do something of the others, first of all, the name is the Home, and Scrum, she's the mission of Haman, these are the Hill, if you Zari, Zerazari, Adelam, the Scream. Any Saraf or Tampa of Ship or Tishmar of Tessie, he sees a couple, you may be a method of the time, ready to be covered. I know if I'm eating and I brought some may by showing.
Amen. Amen.
But there's another difference. Right when you find this other arm, you're supposed to cover your head, right?
That we would like to call upon the Rishus with the permission of Mother the Hasada and Bezdin of Bezdin, the Shchunas Crown Heights, Kansi Mashemes Abracha, Kehila Kadesha Crown Heights, Kansi Mashemes Abracha with the Rishus of Rabbi Ozda Believer. We'd like to call upon my Yichami, my father-in-law, my dearest and revered father-in-law, our Rabbi Avrohom Michal Halevi Flint, father of the Kala, who's going to be marrying off, and we are mechavid him with Siddur Kiddushin.
Tonight, Thursday night, Chafar is the outside of your great-grandfather. My father's the outside. And once it came out on Sunday, so when I went for Dolly, they told Rabbi today is my father's outside. The Rabbi gave me a different dollar and said, I'll never use on the summer. So I'm in, and so is Tavis, and Sheikh now.